It has been a truly momentous week in China. One of power, politics, and paranoia too.
Barriers up everywhere, police.
From a summit that brought together some of the world's key disruptors to a parade laden with warning and shows of allegiance designed to make a statement. A display, no doubt, directed at America. But covering these events in a place like China comes with additional challenges.
Hello. I need to remind you that this is very dangerous.
In a place where people are not able to speak freely. But at a moment where global norms feel in flux, come with us to explore how China is capitalising and how it is projecting its power.
It's about 7 p.m. on Saturday here in China. I'm at Beijing South train station. I'm about to catch a train to the neighbouring city of Tianjin. We're at the start of a really big, really significant week for China. It's going to be hosting a couple of major events with a raft of major world leaders from some of the most important, some would say some of the most disruptive countries around the world. So big questions about what they might achieve, any deals, any pacts. But I think beyond those practical, immediate things, there's questions about China's role, how it's going to position itself. Could it be a global leader? Could it rewrite the global order at a time where it feels Donald Trump has been ripping it up?
While we were packing our bags and getting on our way, the first of the world leaders touched down in China. Narendra Modi of India, Shehbaz Sharif of Pakistan, Alexander Lukashenko of Belarus. There were others, of course. 26 countries will be here in total. Not all had the cameras, but all had matching welcome parties. Carefully choreographed diplomacy. Sunday morning, and there's a clear sense in Tianjin that it's playing host to something major. The only way from our hotel to the summit venue is by shuttle bus, huge swathes of surrounding roads completely closed. And this is the key reason we and the world leaders are here. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, a meeting to discuss security and development issues. The guest list has had some observers dub it part of an axis of upheaval.
This is where we're going to be based for the next few days. Often when you cover summits in China, it can be a little bit frustrating. They often keep the media in big conference rooms like this, crucially far away from the action itself. It's also quite difficult to get even scheduling information from the Chinese authorities with this sort of summit. They are really, really protective of the information. We find out a lot of what we need from some of the visiting delegations, the Russians or the Indians and so forth. But what they lack in information, they have made up for with high-tech show. This robot apparently will help us out wherever we need.
As we were getting settled in, all eyes were on one key arrival, the Russian President Vladimir Putin. What he does and says in the coming days will be keenly watched. President Xi had one-on-one meetings with a lot of leaders today, but one was truly noteworthy, with India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi. Two nations with a history of bitter conflict and rivalry, but a souring of relations with Trump, 50% tariffs on Indian goods, has paved the way for Modi to be here.
So we've just had the readouts from the meeting between Xi and Modi, and the warmth of the language, given the scale of the historic animosity between the two countries, is really quite remarkable. Remember, it's only 5 years ago that violence literally broke out between them on their shared border. But in a way, the success of this meeting is testament to what Xi Jinping is trying to achieve more broadly, but particularly at this summit, an alternative and open arms to those who feel pushed away by Donald Trump.
Time for Alive to take stock.
And it is really telling that at that moment he has chosen to come to China.
Evening brought the welcome banquet. At a fractious time for the world, this was quite the statement. And no questions about who was the guest of honour here. For Putin, a lingering conversation, right-hand position for the pictures. It felt a bit like the others were simply trailing along as they headed on in to have dinner. Their evening rounded off with a cultural show. Our evening rounded off with the final edits to our piece. Monday morning, and it's back on the bus, back to the media centre. Cameraman Lex headed off to film some of the more striking security measures as we got settled in. But for all the careful staging, these were the images of the morning and the ones most likely to stick. China, India and Russia, holding hands, sharing jokes, a show of how well things are going. Time now for the leaders' meeting and speeches. I got plugged in to listen, but remarkably, the organisers cut the audio for all the visiting heads of state. Such is the paranoia here about anything they haven't pre-vetted. But all eyes were on Vladimir Putin, because for him this is the backdrop, his war in Ukraine. Barely 2 weeks ago, he was in Alaska with a different president.
Thank you very much, Vladimir.
His war rages on, and he is looking to shore up support.
We have now had confirmation of what Vladimir Putin said in that speech. The really interesting bit was that he said he will be discussing in one-to-one meetings with leaders here exactly what was said and discussed in that Alaska summit with Donald Trump. So any hope that America and others might have harboured that China wouldn't be given the opportunity to weigh in, absolutely put to bed.
There's much that divides those who sat at this table. What they share is distrust of America. Overt criticism kept subtle.
一是坚持求同存异，继续旗帜鲜明反对霸权主义和强权政治。
But no prizes for guessing who he was talking about. The afternoon rounded off with a press conference with China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi, and then a late dash to the train station to get back to Beijing. And as we were on the move, so was someone else, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, Beijing bound on his highly armoured slow train. So much diplomacy and symbolism still to come. Time to take stock.
If politics is at least in part about optics, it's hard to say that this summit hasn't been successful. There was a whole range of images that will make for really uncomfortable viewing back in the US. And while what's happened in the last few days doesn't necessarily mean that Trump's plan for peace in Ukraine is dead, it does make his influence feel at least a little bit more flimsy. And from China's perspective, that at least is a win. It's Tuesday morning. I'm on my way to work. And I just want to show you the extra security in this. This is our office compound. We just happen to be one row back from where the big, massive military parade is going to be tomorrow. But look, barriers up everywhere, police. Unbelievably, there's a whole extra security scanner that I've got to go through. And people live here, and so people have to go through this just to get into their homes.
We're back on base, and so is President Xi. And in a more relaxed setting, he got down to the details with Putin. Meetings marked for the excessively warm words. Conversations continued over a slow stroll, and there was no doubt over the messaging. China is keeping Russia's war machine afloat, and this is the relationship that matters. Time to film some analysis to chew it all over.
It comes at a time where Donald Trump has been reaching out to Vladimir Putin, where Donald Trump has been trying to build those bridges.
But just a short while later, the police paid us a visit.
Hello.
Someone had captured me on a long lens filming on the balcony.
We need to remind you that this is very dangerous because you're sitting on the edge of the balcony.
We film there all the time, but these days are not normal in Beijing. The next morning for us starts at an ungodly hour. The first stop, a temporary media centre to collect our accreditation. An enormous military parade in Beijing means enormously high security, complete with no fewer than 3 thorough scans and facial recognition. And then a bus through the eerily deserted streets of Beijing. And as the sun rose over Tiananmen Square, the anticipation was palpable. So we're part of this big flood of people who are going in to get security checked. Media, of course, but also selected spectators too. And this is normally a really busy road, just running straight up the side of Tiananmen Square. Finally, it was time to take our positions. It began with a deep hush across this historic square. A sense cannon fire was calling this country to attention. Nothing short of utter perfection would have been acceptable here. Every flex, every gesture, even their height, exactly matched. Tens of thousands marched to remember a world war where this country suffered so much. But under the eye of China's leading regime, looking back is clearly not the key point. From our vantage point, it was quite the show. But these are the images most likely to make history, not just what's on show, but who came to see it. Vladimir Putin to his right, Kim Jong-un to his left, a clear signal of a trio in sync. And it did not go unnoticed by the one man they probably hoped would be watching. Mid-morning, a post from President Trump. "Please give my warmest regards to Putin and Kim," he said, "as you conspire against the United States of America." For us, a rare opportunity to film a piece to camera in Tiananmen Square, where it is normally forbidden.
While a lot of it is directed at the domestic Chinese audience, a homage to China's rise and the vision of President Xi, be in no doubt there is a clear message for the world too, and it is a message about Chinese power.
On our way out, we tried to talk to spectators. But sometimes in China, you sort of know people have been pre-warned not to speak. It was a while before we made it back out and back to base. In the afternoon, cameraman Lex and I filed our final reports, how to sum up such a momentous week. Whichever way you cut this, it really has been an enormous week for both China and Xi Jinping. Day after day of these images of him commanding the agenda, presiding over these big events and, frankly, being pandered to by other countries who need him. And look, we shouldn't overstate this. There are still lots of differences and divisions between China and the nations who have been visiting this week. And the US, despite all of Donald Trump's turmoil, still absolutely holds this huge power to convene and to influence. But nevertheless, I've reported from China for nearly 3 years now, and I'm not sure I've ever seen a period with such levels of confidence and swagger. It really does feel like something might have shifted. China has made efforts over many years to persuade the world that the centre of global power does not necessarily have to be in the West. Perhaps it is now making inroads.